Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Network. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casuan Caudle, and once again, I am just so blessed and grateful to be talking to you guys on this beautiful day about the game of basketball. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, loyally, consistently tuning in, to hear me ramble on and give my insight about this game of basketball. A little self-deprecation to start out the day. But in all seriousness, I am appreciative for you guys, and I'm blessed for this opportunity. I know I say it every day, but it's important to be aware of what you have in this life. And I'm blessed with the opportunity to talk about basketball, and I get to play basketball, and I mean, it's amazing. Now, before I get started, I woke up today, because today's Saturday at the time of recording. And today's my off day. I don't get very many off days, but today I had an off day, and I thought to myself, what do I want to do? So I went to the gym, did some yoga, came back. I thought to myself, okay, I don't have anything else to do for the rest of the day. What should I do? And I started flipping through the TV channels. I very rarely turn on the TV. I turned the TV on and I saw some movies that popped up. And there's Rambo, there's Rocky, there's Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins, there's Shawshank Redemption, there's Avengers, Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. All these movies are on the movie list right now. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to watch right now? I want to be entertained right now. It's a Saturday morning. I'm not doing anything. Don't want to really be mentally or emotionally invested in anything. I just want to kick back and just kind of unwind, just watch something entertaining. And I chose an action movie. Now I'm gonna leave that story right there, and we're gonna get back to it. But for the rest of the show, our other segments, we're going to be talking about when it's time for a team to have a new voice, which in layman's terms means when it's time to get rid of your head coach. We're also going to be talking about whether or not Rajon Rondo is a Hall of Famer, because that is a question that needs to be broached. And then we're also going to be talking about where exactly confidence comes from, whether it be in your sport or even in your career field or even just how you carry yourself on a general basis. Where does confidence come from, and how can that be instilled? So we're going to be talking about that during the show later on. But getting back to this action movie. So I chose the action movie that I wanted to watch. I chose Avengers, Infinity War. Because I wanted to be entertained. I didn't want to be emotionally invested. I didn't want to be mentally invested. I just wanted to watch something that was entertaining. So I chose Avengers, Infinity War. And my mind is always on the game of basketball, so I think to myself, wow, isn't Russell Westbrook just like an action movie? A great talent, great effects, great action. But we all know intrinsically that these great action movies never win Academy Awards. That doesn't take away from how good they are and how entertaining they are to watch. But they're never going to win an award because that's not how they were built. Action movies aren't made, they're not directed, they're not produced with the thought process of winning an award. You know, have we ever seen an action movie, a purely action movie, win an Academy Award? I mean, Avengers is going to make a lot of money and it's popular because it is a good movie, but it's never going to beat out, Gone Girl or Interstellar for an Academy Award. Sorry, the list of Academy Award movies that have been nominated completely just slipped my mind. But Avengers are never going to win an Academy Award because that's not what it's built for. That's not the intention of it. And getting back to Russell Westbrook is without a doubt, emphatically, not only the most athletic point guard we've ever seen, but he's in my top 5 contention for most athletic players I've ever seen play this game of basketball. You have guys like Will Chamberlain, who actually was in the Olympic trials for the long jump while he was playing. So you have guys like Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, guys that are just immensely athletic, just superbly athletic. Not dominant, but athletic. And Westbrook is on that list, that short list of most athletic players to ever play this game of basketball. So Westbrook is immensely athletic. And early on in his career, he was so athletic, he didn't have to develop a skill set. Let me say that again. He was so athletic, he didn't have to develop a skill set, which means he didn't have to worry about developing a consistent pull-up, a consistent, catch and shoot. He didn't even have to worry about playing off the ball because he was a primary ball handler. And what you start to notice is that as Westbrook gets older, things like his shooting percentage starts to go down. But why exactly is the shooting percentage going down? So if we go back and look at his film, Westbrook's shot is high arcing without much flick of his wrist. So the ball doesn't get much rotation. It's very it's like if you guys have ever seen a knuckleball thrown in baseball, when it gets up in the air, it's like it stays flat. There's no rotation. It's just stagnant. And that's how Westbrook is when he shoots, because he gets arc, like I said, and gets elevation on the shot. But there's not much rotation because there's not much flick of the wrist. But when you're young and athletic as Westbrook is, that doesn't affect you as much because when you shoot it openly, you're going to hit it. You're going to hit shots. And because he's so athletic, guys can't stay in front of him. So a lot of times he's getting those shots off without any contest. And if you leave anyone in the league uncontested, these are great players, they're going to hit shots, regardless of their form, rotation, mechanics, whatever. But what you start to see is that as Westbrook starts to lose a little bit of his athleticism, the shooting percentage goes down slowly goes down because now he can't blow by guys as frequently as he used to. So now defenders are able to stay in front of him And now that form is still not fixed. And he's shooting the same way he shot when he first got in the league. High arc, high elevation, but not much rotation. And when you have mechanics like that have not been fixed, and you're shooting against a defender and you're shooting it contested, your margin for error is a lot smaller when you don't have the right mechanics. And so Westbrook never fixed those mechanics, which is why his shooting percentage is going down, because when he's shooting it contested, it's not going to go in as frequently because the mechanics were never fixed, which is why we start to see his shooting percentage go down. So if we look at let's just look at his field goal percentage over the past 4 years. We've got 44, 42, 47, 43% from the field, which is, to begin with, as point guards, we should be shooting above 50% at least. But what this inconsistency tells me is that his athleticism is decreasing. He can't blow by his finish, which is normal. Everyone's athleticism is going to drop. But because his mechanics on the shot was never fixed, he's shooting a lot of those shots contested. And because the mechanics aren't good, he's not going to be able to shoot those shots efficiently, contested. And another stat that has stood out to me over the past, especially 5 years, is his free throw shooting percentage. So let's look at the past 4 years, his free throw percentage. Westbrook is shooting, he shot 65%, 76%, 73%, and he's currently shooting 62% from the free throw line. As point guards, we should be shooting nothing less than 80. Minimum 80. Now, if you want to see how great or how good Sloan is at shooting, then their free throw percentage will say a lot. It'll give us a huge indicator on how good that person is at shooting. And Westbrook, like I said, over the years, his free throw percentage is starting to drop, which that also comes back to mechanics. But now it's at the point that, and people that have played basketball are going to understand this. A lot of it when it comes to free throw shooting is mental. A lot of it's mental. So if you see your first free throw go in, it's a lot easier to see that second, third, fourth, and fifth free throw go in. But if you start out on a miss, if you miss that first free throw, now you're thinking, okay, what I did wrong? Let me fix this. And you start to overcompensate. And so you'll miss the second one, and then you'll make the third, but then you'll miss the next three. So free throw shooting, a lot of it's mental, but it's mental because we're overthinking the mechanics that have not been worked. But if the mechanics have been worked and there's confidence in what we've done, what we practiced, and so there's no overthinking. We know we need to fix it, we fix it. And this is in no way me dogging Westbrook at all. I'm just being objective and I'm telling you what I see. Because they are leaving Westbrook wide open. At least in Houston, they were leaving Westbrook wide open for the three. But what I like that Westbrook would do, he wouldn't shoot the three. He would go into his mid-range and shoot it. Because he knows what he does well, which is why I love how his play in Houston. He knew what he did well, and now he's attacking the basket and finishing at the rim. He knew his niche and he knew what he did well, and he executed on that. But the point I'm trying to make is that Westbrook can be so much better And he could have been so much better. It's because to whom much is given, much is required. So if I didn't think Westbrook had an immense level of potential to be possibly one of the greatest players to ever play this game, I wouldn't say much about his shooting. I would just say, okay, he maxed out. But because I know that there's so much more to Westbrook, to what he could have been, I have to hold him to that standard and say, okay, you didn't reach your full potential. Because I know what you are, I know what you could have been. And you didn't reach that. So it's a compliment that or anyone holds you to a higher standard because they see a lot out of you. Not everything is personal. Not everything is, maniacal or done with ill intentions. Westbrook has one of the highest ceilings I've ever seen in NBA history, but he didn't reach that ceiling. And a lot of players don't, unfortunately. So Westbrook, because of his athleticism, like I said in the beginning, never had to really develop a skill set. Because if I were to ask someone on the street, what's Russell Westbrook's go-to move? What is it? What 10 seconds on the clock. You're down by 1. What move is Westbrook going to make? What, besides just blowing by, what's his move? Is it a drag into a step back? Is it just a step back? Is it attack and punch dribble? Is it a sidestep? Is it a hesitation? Is it a between cross into a drag? What's his go-to move? What is Westbrook's go-to move? And if you can't answer that, that's telling me that he's never had one, which tells me that he's always relied on his athleticism, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, depending on what your standard is, I think it's a bad thing because if he developed a much higher skill set, he'd be one of the, now we're talking about him as being one of the greatest players of all time. But he never had to. But more importantly, I think his coaches never told him either, or whoever is training him or in his inner circle never told him, hey, Russ, let's get your handle tight. Let's get your hesitation tighter. Let's work on you getting a drag step or a side step. Let's add that dimension to your game without you having to rely solely on your athleticism. No one in his circle or in his camp or on the coaching staff told him that. And they had to be held accountable for that as well. But at the end of the day, you control your career, your body, and how you develop. So I do have to put most of the accountability on Westbrook because it is his career at the end of the day. But those the people on his coaching staff and in his circle, like I said, had to be held accountable as well. And so Westbrook never had to rely on a skill set as the way a Stephen Curry or a Kemba Walker or an Isaiah Thomas or a Kyrie Irving, guys that aren't superbly athletic, had developed a skill set. So now we can say, okay, Kyrie's probably going to get to the basket and go to a side step or finish under the rim on his go-to move. Kemba's going to go into his step back or his punch dribble. Steph is going to do a drag, another drag, and then in and out into a pull-up. You know, I can tell you what these guys are going to do with their skill set, what move they're going to do in a current situation like that. I can't say that with Westbrook. And if I'm being completely transparent, when we get back to Westbrook's shooting, if Westbrook was to shoot consistently throughout his career at least 37 or 36%, we'll say 36% from the 3-point line, we are now talking about Russell Westbrook as one of the greatest players of all time. Top 10. With his athleticism and his build. If Russell Westbrook shoots 37% from the 3-point line, coupled in with his athleticism, and the numbers he has put up in his career, we're talking about him as a top 10 player of all time, as opposed to just one of the top players possibly of this generation. And you see how that standard differentiates? See how that separates you? So when I see Westbrook play, based off of his athleticism, I see top 10 of all time. But then I see the skill set, how it's not there. It doesn't match. I see the mental aptitude. Amazing IQ, but in crunch situations, there's no composure. Because he only knows one speed. He only knows one way to go, and that's full speed, which is commendable. But there needs to be nuance in that. And that's why he's not in that top 10 all-time status. Now he's considered, okay, is he one of the best of this generation? Now that's the debate, as opposed to, is he one of the greatest to ever do it? It's a huge difference. And that difference comes in the skill set, which is nuanced. Everything lies in nuance. Everything great lies in nuance. So Westbrook, amazing player, amazing athleticism, amazing talent. But like a great action movie, I know what I'm getting out of it. It's not going to win an award, but it's going to be entertaining to watch. Russell Westbrook, great player. But I do want to segue back. I want to segue into coaching now. And when is the right time to get rid of a voice in the locker room or to get rid of a head coach? So stick around, and I'm going to talk about that next.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our second segment, the second topic. Now, for those of you who tuned into the first topic, I know that what I said about Russell Westbrook might come off as polarizing or maybe insincere or not rational. I just want to say this before I get into this next topic. The truth is very rarely does the truth bring people together. And that's a very common misconception. Quite often, the truth is actually quite polarizing. It tends to separate people and it tends to cause division. But after that division, it becomes very clear where people stand on a topic, which is really all you want. You want clarity at the end of the day. And with that being said, I want to reiterate that Westbrook is an amazing talent, an amazing player, but he underperformed. He did underperform, but he didn't reach his potential. And I have to keep him accountable to that because I hold him to a higher standard, higher than most other players, because his ceiling's higher. So I have to hold him to a higher standard. But you know who else in the realm of basketball, no matter what level you're at, is held to a high standard? and rightfully so. Coaches, head coaches. Now, this is something I've thought about for quite a while. What is more important to a championship team? Is it coaching or talent, the players? And when I was younger, when I was in high school, I used to believe that talent can overcome for bad coaching. I believe that. But after getting the experience of playing in college and now playing professionally, I emphatically know from experience that you can have all the talent, but if the coach isn't at the least adequate, then it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's not going to be successful. The coach has to be adequate. It has to be substantial. You have to have a good coach in that position. And in college, it's much clearer to see who's a bad coach and who isn't because of the talent level. It varies in college. But in the NBA, everybody is talented. And so the talent makes up for the bad coaching. And it's harder to see bad coaching. But what you start to see is that coach, and I say bad, but bad is relative. Like if you're coaching in the NBA, you're not a bad coach by relativity. You know, you're a good coach to be in that league. But compared to the other coaches in the league, you might not be as good. But what you start to see is teams start to cap out and max out quicker, or not even reach their potential when it comes to coaching. And I'm under the notion now that coaching is more important than talent when it comes to winning. But both are necessary. Both need to be in congruency with each other. But coaching is far more important than talent when it comes to winning consistently. So there's never been a coach, doesn't matter what dynasty, what team has won championship, that coach was always adequate. That coach was never just horrid and awful. That coach was always good. You know, I'm just thinking back from the past 20 years. You know, that's Steve Kerr, Nick Nurse, Ty Lue, Doc Rivers, Greg Popovich, Eric Spoelstra. I mean, that's just in this decade. Rick Carlisle. You know, Phil Jackson. We got these guys. This is just more recently, but you've got these great coaches. All of them are great. So there has to be, the coach has to have a certain level of talent, or it has to be an exceptional coach to get the most out of those players, no matter how talented they are. But with that being said, there does come a time, though, where a new voice is necessary within the locker room. And what you see is that, and I want to use Brad Stevens as an example here. Brad Stevens came into this league as the youngest coach in the NBA, coaching for the Boston Celtics. Came in during the 2013-2014 season. Now, they didn't make the playoffs until the 2014-2015 season. So that next year they made the playoffs. They get bounced out in the first round to Cleveland. Then the next year they lose to Atlanta in the first round as well. Then they make it to the conference finals in 2017. Conference finals again in 2018. They lose in the second round to Milwaukee in 2019. 2020, they lose to Miami in the second round. And now they're the 7th seed in the playoffs. And Brad Stevens had a lot of success early on. And he still has had a quite a high level of success all in Boston. But when you watch them play, when you watch Boston play right now, and you see how the players are moving, you see their body language in the huddles and when they're interacting with Brad Stevens, it appears as if the respect level is there, but what's being said is going in one ear and out the other. And have your parents ever told you something over and over and over and over again, and you hear it for so long, you become mute to it. You're not even really listening to it. You're phoning it in. You're saying just okay, all right. They're saying this again, and it's almost falling on deaf ears. And that is what it appears to be happening in Boston with Brad Stevens. It appears that he's had that nucleus of guys around. And I'm talking Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart. You know, those core guys and Kemba Walker. Those core guys have been there for so long without reaching the necessary level of success to compensate for their repetitiveness. And what I mean by that is, if Boston was to, say, make it even to the finals, at least one of those years, not win it, but make it to the finals, the winning, so winning cures all ailments. So if they were to just make it to the NBA finals, listening to Brad Stevens becomes more manageable for those players. But because they've never reached that pinnacle, that next level, it's hard for them to listen to Brad Stevens because nothing has come of it, quote unquote. They haven't reached that next level, that NBA finals, that next, platform. And so it's hard because now what the players are thinking is, all right, Brad has been saying this for the past 5 years, and what's come of it? Subconsciously, they're thinking that, but consciously, yes, they're still giving him the respect, but subconsciously, that's what they're thinking. And so we have to ask ourselves: has Brad Stevens run his course? Has he run his out of time in Boston? And just because someone has ran their course in a specific area, that doesn't mean that they're a bad coach. In no way whatsoever is Brad Stevens a bad coach. His time just might be up in Boston. So what are you going to do? Are you going to get rid of the core group of guys and keep the coach? Or are you going to keep the core group of guys and get rid of the coach? You know what you're going to get rid of the players or the coach? Which one are you going to do? You've invested more with the draft picks and capital and trades into those players. So since you invested more, just like the stock, you want to keep the stock. You don't want to get rid of it. You're going to keep those players. Or you're going to get rid of the coach. And that's going to be something that Danny Ainge has to think about going into this offseason, especially if Boston gets bounced out in the first or second round, let alone not even make the playoffs. That's going to be something that Ainge has to think about. Has Brad Stevens ran his course in Boston? What I see when the players are interacting with him in the sideline, like I said, they look dejected and they're engaged, listening to him, not disrespecting him in any way. But it appears that it's going in one ear and out the other. And a more recent example of that I want to bring up as well is Doc Rivers when he's with the Clippers. The same problem. Doc had success early on with the Clippers, but they never reached that next step of getting to the conference finals. And with those core group of guys that are there, what's going to happen is that they're going to start thinking to themselves, just like in Boston, okay, Doc is saying the same thing over and over and over and over again, but there's nothing coming from it. We're not getting to that next level. We're not getting to that next step. So they start to tune him out. And we saw what happened with the Clippers and Doc Rivers. Do not be surprised if that same thing happens in Boston with Doc Rivers. With Brad Stevens. Doc Rivers has to leave the Clippers. He goes to Philly. Ty Lue comes in. It's a fresh voice. It's a new voice. And sometimes even if that voice isn't better, quote unquote, it's something new. It's refreshing. It's revitalizing. So those players are gonna feel rejuvenated and say, "Oh, Ty Lue knows what he's talking about." Even if Doc Rivers, or even if he's saying the same exact thing that Doc Rivers said, they're gonna feel like Ty Lue is the best thing since sliced bread because it's something new. It's refreshing. It's different. Everyone likes something new. We like new things. We want things that are refreshing, something that's out the norm. And so Ty Lue is going to be able to get more out of the players than Doc Rivers did because of the fact that he is new. It's his first year in that position. And we're seeing it now. The Clippers look, despite the acquisition of Rondo as well, but the Clippers look well. They look great right now. And let's transition that over to Philly and Doc Rivers. Brett Brown was there for so long. He ran his course. His words started falling on deaf ears. And Doc comes in with pedigree and respect, a new, fresh voice. And look where he has Philly now, at the top of the Eastern Conference. And so sometimes just the fact that something is new is good enough for us as players. And sometimes you can translate that to life too, in certain aspects. And just because a coach can't get his team to that next level doesn't make him a bad coach. Sometimes it takes a fresh new voice to get that team to that next level. And this is where the tier system of coaching comes into play. Think about Mark Jackson as well in Golden State. Mark Jackson set up that dynasty in Golden State. He laid down the foundation. He made the draft picks and the trades. But if we have to call it for what it is, his words started falling on deaf ears because he rebuilt. He was in the rebuilding process in Golden State. And he got into the playoffs a couple of years. But his words started falling deaf ears. And Steve Kerr comes in and inherits all of that. Inherits everything that's going on in Golden State. And that fresh new voice is able to get them to the next level, that next platform of winning in the playoffs, winning championships. Now, mind you, Steve Kerr also implemented a new offense that was less relying on isolation as opposed to ball movement and cuts and a lot of flex cuts and a few stagger screens, much more ball movement and spacing as opposed to the isolation ball that Mark Jackson had. But the fresh voice was the biggest factor in getting that Golden State team to that next level. And that's what it takes sometimes to get the most out of those players, out of us as players. We need a fresh new voice. And that's where the tier system comes in. And just like I said, certain coaches can only rebuild a team. They can only get a team to the door. The coaches can drive the car, get them to the door, get them to the front steps of the door. But in that next tier, there are coaches that have the key. They have the key to the door that can unlock it. And they can get the team inside the house. So what's the point of hanging on to somebody that can only get you to the house, get you to the door, but can't get you inside? Don't you want to be with somebody that can actually get you inside? Is it not a waste of time to just get to the door and have to sleep outside? No, don't you want to get inside the house? Certain coaches only have the key. Certain coaches only have the key. They can't drive. They can't get you to the front door, but they can get you inside the house. Vice versa, there are some coaches that can drive you. They can get you to the front step, but they don't have the key to get you in. See what I'm saying? The reason I ask, is it a waste of time? It's not. It depends on what stage and what position that franchise, your team is in. Are you rebuilding? You need a coach that can help rebuild. That can create a culture. But you have to understand that coach might not be able to get you to that next step. He might be able to get you to the playoffs, but he might not be able to help you win a championship. But just like there are some coaches that cannot rebuild. They can't get the most out. They can't galvanize the troops. They can't create a culture. But they know how to win. And those coaches are made for teams that are on the cusp, the precipice of winning a championship. But they're missing one thing. Those coaches are meant for those teams. They can get in the playoffs, but they can't quite win. Bring in a new coach. Now they're competing for championships as opposed to competing to get into the playoffs. And that's what I mean when I say coaching tiers. There's tiers to coaching. Not to say that one tier is necessarily better than the other, but what does your franchise need in that moment? That's what I mean when it comes to coaching tiers. And you have to have awareness and understand where you are and what you need in that moment, just like in life. But do not be surprised if Brad Stevens is coaching for another team besides the Boston Celtics. If I had to bet my salary on it right now, I would say he is, but I'm not a betting man. I like my money too much. But just be observant, be aware. Look. I'm pointing this out, but when you watch Boston, look how they react. Look how they interact in the huddles, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And just to close out, as I said previously, you have to be good. Every coach in the NBA is good. You have to be good to coach that level. But are you good for that? Are you good for the fit? Are you what that team needs, what that franchise needs? If not, then you're going to look worse than what you really are. But if you are what they need, you're going to look amazing. Maybe even better than what you really are. So you have to be aware of that. Speaking of greatness, though, Rajon Rondo. Is he a Hall of Famer? Might be a far-fetched question, but stick around for this next segment and I'll give you my thoughts on that. And also be sure to stick around for our last segment of the day to hear me talk about where confidence comes from and how you can achieve it. So stick around for the rest of the show. You're not going to miss it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everybody. As we head into our third segment of this show, we've talked about two different things. We've talked about coaching and teams needing a new voice. And that's okay. Sometimes you need a voice, you need a fresh start. I talked about that in our last show. Needing a fresh start to feel revitalized. And I talked about Russell Westbrook and how he has underwhelmed, not to take away from his stats. He's putting up tremendous numbers, but the standard for him is higher. And you can say he didn't max out. He didn't reach his full potential. But I want to talk about a player that has maxed out, that reached his full potential. A player that doesn't get the necessary credit he deserves day in and day out. It's because he's not flashy. It's because he doesn't score 30 points a game. It's because he doesn't jump out the gym. He's not attacking the rim and finishing over the top of somebody, dunking on somebody. No, but he plays the game the right way. I'm talking about Rajon Rondo. And I want to broach this question. I just want to throw it out there. Is Rajon Rondo a Hall of Famer? Let's sit back and think about this. What has his career been consistent of? Let's just go throughout his career. Starts out in Boston. As a young player, wins a championship at a young age with Boston. Goes to 2 NBA finals, actually. Then he goes to Dallas and Sacramento. And then Chicago, Pelicans, Lakers, Atlanta for a brief stint. Now the Clippers. And I don't think anyone would argue that his best years were in Boston. But let's look at what he did in Chicago. He led that team to a team with Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade, of course. He led that team to the playoffs and had them up 2-0 against the one-seeded, aforementioned Boston Celtics. Now, in that playoff series, Rondo broke his thumb and ended up missing the rest of the series after game 2. But who's to say if Rondo's healthy that they don't win that series? And let's look at the next year with the Pelicans. They sweep the higher seeded Portland Trailblazers in the first round as a 6 seed. Portland was a 3 seed. Sweep the Blazers, and then loses in 5 to Golden State. And we know what happened with the Lakers, helped them win the championship. And we see what he's about to do now with the Clippers. I mean, it looks like they're on pace to make it out of the Western Conference. And the point I'm trying to make is that what Rondo does outside of his playmaking ability doesn't show up on the stat sheet. Because his assist numbers do show up. I mean, he's a 3-time assist champion. And he's a 1-time steals champion. He's a 4-time All-NBA defensive player. He's a 1-time All-NBA player. And he made the All-Rookie team. So Rondo has the pedigree, you could argue. And he has and he's a 4-time All-Star. How could I forget that? So he has the cachet to his name. And we have to see what he does when it matters most. Look at what he does in the playoffs. I don't want to read his stats for the playoffs, but his elevated level of play is apparent. I mean, it's as clear as day. And is consistent. No matter what team he goes to, Rondo makes that team better in the playoffs. And anywhere he goes, besides Dallas, because him and Rick Carlisle got into it, all the coaches say the same thing about Rondo. That he made the team better. He held everyone accountable. And his IQ level is bar none. Almost on a genius level. And that's exactly what you want out of a point guard. Someone that's able to get the most out of his teammates. That's vocal. That's a leader. That's going to challenge somebody. And Rondo checks all the boxes off that list. And most importantly, Rondo knows how to win. Rondo knows how to win. And you look at a guy like Chris Paul, and you compare Rondo to Chris Paul. In a vacuum, better player is obviously Chris Paul. But then you start looking at, okay, who plays better in the playoffs? Who elevates their level of play? And mind you, we got to understand that Chris Paul, well, I was going to say Chris Paul has not had the same teammates, as good as teammates as Rondo had, but you can look back. Look who Chris Paul's played with. I mean, he's played with Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, in their primes, by the way, JJ Redick, Jamal Crawford, a prime Tyson Chandler, a prime David West, James Harden, Eric Gordon, Capella, Trevor Ariza. Both of those guys I played with talented players, but you would argue and you could say that Chris Paul had a larger load to carry than Rondo on those teams. But Rondo was no pushover and was no slouch. Rondo, we forget, had a 44-point game in the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami back in 2012. And you can make the argument that if Boston won the 2010 NBA Finals against the Lakers, then Rondo would have been Finals MVP. If I'm not mistaken, Rondo was averaging close to a triple-double. And if I'm wrong about that stat, someone can correct me, but Rondo was averaging near a triple-double during those NBA Finals. And if they win those NBA Finals, Rondo is the Finals MVP. And if Rondo is the Finals MVP, he has that to his name, and a three-time NBA champion and a Finals MVP. Now we're really talking about, is Rondo a Hall of Famer? And it's not a question of if, but it's a matter of how many times will it take for him to get implemented into the Hall of Fame. But I digress. That's neither here nor there. But what Rondo has done, he has maximized his potential. He has maxed out his ceiling. His head is on the roof right now, quite literally. But going back to this comparison with Rondo and Chris Paul, and we know the beef they had, beef going way back to 2008 in regards to the Olympics. That's where the beef really started. And going back to the players in Boston wanting to trade Rondo for Chris Paul, because that trade was going to happen. I believe that was back in 2009 or 2010. Somewhere around that time frame, Chris Paul's about to get traded to Boston for Rondo. Switch for switch. People forget about that. But that's where the beef started as well. But then also everyone knows about the incident in LA when Rondo was on the Lakers and CP was on Houston, the whole spitting incident. So those guys have beef, but I'm not worried about the beef. I'm just worried about the level of play and the comparison between those two. In a vacuum, Chris Paul's a better player, but we could make the argument that Rondo has been the better player in the playoffs and maybe even the better point guard. Now, look at what Chris Paul has done in OKC last year. He maximized those guys. And look what he's doing in Phoenix. He's maximizing getting the most out of his teammates. Now, what both of these players do well is they hold their teammates to a higher standard. But what you hear about Chris Paul is that he can be difficult to be around. But let me just get this out the way. Anyone that's great and is wired differently in terms of like wanting to be successful, if you're not on the same wavelength as them, it's gonna be difficult to be around them. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what avenue, field of work you're in. That's how it's gonna be. And you don't quite hear that with Rondo. You don't hear the negativity in terms of him being a bad teammate. Now, he's gonna rip into you. He's gonna get into you, but he's gonna get the most out of you as well, which is why he's doing that. So I think that comparison is a lot closer than people think. Overall player in a vacuum, Chris Paul, far better. Hall of Famer. Rondo, we had to start considering him to be in the Hall of Fame, especially if he wins a championship here with the Clippers, with the Clippers. Everywhere he has gone, he has maximized the most out of his teammates. And like I said, a lot of what he does doesn't show up on the stat sheet aside of his assist. His leadership qualities, his communication skills, his IQ is bar none, like I said. I mean, there's a quote from Ty Lue back when he coached. He was on the Boston coaching staff back in 2012, and he said that Rondo's too smart for his own good. And this is when Rondo was like 25 years old, haven't even hit his prime yet, saying that Rondo's too smart for his own good. He knows too much, which is why it's hard to coach. It was hard to coach him for a time, because most of the time Rondo knows more than the player, more than the coach, in terms of what's going on in the play, what he's seeing, the reads. He knows more than the coach in most times. So we have to start giving more appreciation for what Rondo has done throughout his career. And I wanted to bring up another player that didn't quite get the credit that he deserved as well, who also played in Boston as well as Seattle, and that's Dennis Johnson. Dennis Johnson was a 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, 3-time NBA champ, 9-time All-NBA defensive team, and he has a Finals MVP. But those stats are quite similar to Rondo, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, let's just do a comparison. Dennis Johnson is a 5-time All-Star. Rondo is a 4-time All-Star. Dennis Johnson is a 2-time All-NBA player. Rondo made the All-NBA team 1 time. Dennis Johnson is a 3-time NBA champ. Rondo is a 2-time NBA champ and could get his 3rd one this year. Dennis Johnson is a 9-time All-NBA defensive team player. Rondo is a 4-time All-NBA defensive team player. The biggest thing that Dennis Johnson has that Rondo doesn't is the NBA Finals MVP back in 78, 79, if I'm not mistaken, that season. That's the big thing that Dennis Johnson has that Rondo doesn't. But what Rondo has that Dennis Johnson doesn't have is that 3-time assist champ and the 1-time steals champ. And I always was a proponent that Dennis Johnson, it took way too long for Dennis Johnson to get into the Hall of Fame. And quite frankly, if I'm being completely honest, the reason they put Dennis Johnson in is because they felt bad when he passed away. He should have been in the Hall of Fame before that. Why did it take him passing away for them to let him into the Hall of Fame? Seems almost disingenuous. Dennis Johnson should have been in the Hall of Fame decades before he passed away. If Dennis Johnson is in the Hall of Fame, as he should be, rightfully so, Rondo, if he wins another championship, Rondo is a Hall of Famer. quiet as kept. If Rondo wins another championship, he will be in the Hall of Fame. And you can make an argument right now, even if he doesn't win, you can make an argument that he can still be in the Hall of Fame. It'll be a very difficult one. Not sure if he would win it. But you could make that argument. If he doesn't win another championship, is Rondo a Hall of Famer? But if he wins another one with the Clippers, emphatically, without a doubt, Rondo is a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's a second ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not even saying he's a third ballot Hall of Famer. But Rondo will be in the Hall of Fame if he wins this third championship. That's an if. It's a big if. But Rondo being in the Hall of Fame is not as far-fetched of an idea as you might expect it to be. And a lot of what Rondo does, you have to see. You have to watch his game. Look at how easily he creates shots for others. And look how he's able to dictate traffic, dictate where his teams need to be within the offensive set or the offensive play. And just talking about his skill set, Rondo has added his ability to shoot the ball. He's added to his game. Obviously because he's not able to rely on his athleticism like other players. So he has to add more. And he very rarely turns the ball over, which is also what you want to see out of your point guards. And another question you can ask, so is Rondo better than Dennis Johnson? I don't think he's better than Chris Paul. He performs better in the playoffs. I don't think he's better than Chris Paul, though. Is he better than Dennis Johnson, though? That is a question that can be had. Now, Dennis Johnson was far more athletic, especially when he was in Seattle. But Dennis Johnson wasn't the playmaker that Rondo is. He was a bigger guard. He was 6'4", so he could be more of a pest defensively than Rondo. But Rondo still had great hand speed and was able to fill the passing lanes, which is why he was able to get so many steals. I think Rondo was a better shooter than Dennis Johnson. A better rebounder. More vocal. So you can make the argument that Rondo's better than DJ. And if you're asking me right now, I would say that Rajon Rondo is better than Dennis Johnson. But Dennis Johnson performed well. Great. He won that championship in Seattle when he won Finals MVP. Then he got 2 more in Boston. But if you're asking me, I think Rondo's better than Dennis Johnson. And if Rondo wins the championship, he's in the Hall of Fame. So this notion that Rondo not having a chance of being in the Hall of Fame is hogwash. It's poo-poo. If Rondo wins this championship, he will be in the Hall of Fame. He will be in the Hall of Fame. It's going to be exciting to see how he performs. And he has performed well so far with the Clippers. You can see, Paul George said a quote the other day that really stuck with me. Really said more. This quote says more about the lack of leadership with the Clippers. But he said that Paul George said that after 3 days, Rondo became the leader of that team for the Clippers. I think that says more about what the Clippers were lacking as opposed to what they got with Rondo, but that's another story for another day. But that shows you why, like I said in 2 episodes ago, that was the biggest pickup of the trade deadline, of the buyout market, was Rondo going to the Clippers. His impact is already seen, and it's going to be even clearer when the playoffs come around. So Rondo, a Hall of Famer. I believe so. I believe he will be, especially if he wins a championship this year. But you know what all Hall of Famers have in common? They're all confident. Every single one of them. So stick around for our final segment to hear me talk about where confidence comes from and how can it be instilled in you. So stick around. You're not going to miss it.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our final segment of the show. Thank you so much for you guys tuning in and listening to this show in its entirety. I can't stress enough how grateful and honored I am just to be talking with you guys about, not just about life, but if you haven't noticed, we talk about a lot of introspective topics on here as well, because life and so sports as a whole is an excellent and accurate representation of life. A lot of the traits and tendencies and skills that you learn in sports can directly correlate to life as well. And one skill or trait, more specifically trait, that I want to talk about that pertains to sports, but can also pertain to life, is confidence. So confidence is something that some of us struggle keeping on a daily basis. So I want to start out by saying that very, very few people are confident all the time and every single day. And it is okay to not feel confident in yourself on certain days, right? But what we have to work on is being confident for as long as possible. Because there's going to be days where you don't feel like yourself and you feel like you don't have it. That's normal. That's just a part of life. But we want to minimize those days. We want to minimize the amount of those days that we have, right? So where does confidence come from? How do you gain confidence? And what can we do to increase our confidence? And how does it affect us? And I want to tell this story. I want to tell this story back to when I was training a couple of the younger players in this area. So when I got back from the UK, summer of 2020, in my area in DC, I was training a couple of the kids, and we just finished our workout and we're sitting on the court, on the side of the court, and they're asking me, Coach Caudle, how do I increase my confidence? Because I feel that sometimes when I get in the game, I don't have the confidence to do the stuff we do in practice. How do I increase my confidence? And I'm not going to say the kid's name, but he's a great kid. I looked at him and said, well, why are you asking me? Why are you asking me about your confidence? And obviously that's the young kid was, 12 years old. So he looked at me perplexed and like he had seen the ghost, because that's obviously that wasn't the answer he was expecting. And he said, Coach Caudle, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. And I said, why is it that your confidence needs to be validated by me? Or why do you feel that I can give you confidence? Why do you feel like I can give you something that is already within you? And when I said that, I was like, he said, well, what do you mean? And I told him that it doesn't matter what I tell you. At the end of the day, you're always going to be accountable for your confidence. No matter what I do, what I tell you, no matter what advice I give, you are the person that's going to be accountable for your confidence. And I'm telling that story because just like that young kid that I was coaching, you yourself are the only person that's responsible and accountable for your confidence. It doesn't matter what anyone else says, doesn't matter what anyone else does. Your confidence is solely dependent on you. So you can go to all these weekend getaway trips, a self-rejuvenation trip. You can look at all these self-help tutorials. You can read all these self-help books. You can look at all these personality videos. You can look at all these hype videos. None of that's going to do it. That is not going to give you or help you increase your confidence. You can't look for external sources to improve something that's internal. I'm going to say that again. You can't look for external sources to increase something that's internal. So confidence is something that's internal. It's something within us. We can't look to outside sources to validate it or increase it, because that's not substantial. That's not how things work. So the question becomes, how do we increase our confidence? What do we do to increase our confidence? What do we do? And I remember reading this quote by Dick DeVinzio. Dick DeVinzio was a former college coach from Indiana. And he says that confidence actually is a facade. That confidence is merely just how we feel about our work ethic and how hard we work. I won't go that far. I think confidence is a real thing. It's not a facade. But what it is that our confidence is directly correlated with our work ethic and how much work we're putting in to any given field or subject. So for me, as a basketball player, if I am not confident in my ability to use my floater, that is because I'm not practicing using my floater. I'm not using it during practice. I'm not using it during workouts. So if I'm not practicing it, I'm not going to have confidence in it in the game. So whatever we lack confidence in, we have to put more work towards. If you don't put the work towards something, and if you don't put in the necessary effort, you're never going to have confidence in it. And that's with anything in life. If you're not confident about where you stand in your relationship, you're not putting in the necessary work to find out or to improve the relationship. So until you do that, you're never going to have confidence in where you stand in the relationship. So you have to work on necessary things that are going to improve where you stand, whether that be communication or patience, whatever. Just like in sports and basketball. If I'm not working on my floater during practice, if I'm not working on shooting that floater high off the glass over 7-footers and going off the inside foot for a quicker release, I'm not going to have confidence in it when it comes to the game because I haven't put in the work. Your work ethic and your confidence directly correlate with each other. You cannot have one without the other. They're a symbiotic relationship. So when people say, oh, I got confidence from doing this, I got confidence from doing that. An external source. They're lying. No. You get confidence by working hard at something. The more work you put towards a certain situation or a certain field, the more confident you are going to be in that field. And that is as simple as I can put it. That is a simple concept. But which is why I said confidence can leave, though. There can be some days where you don't feel as confident. But in order to minimize those days, we have to work hard. The harder we work, the more confidence we have, and the more we feel confident day in and day out. And it is no surprise, it is no coincidence that the people with the most confidence tend to be the ones working hardest. True confidence. Confidence and arrogance are two different things, by the way. We had to be able to discern the difference between the two. True confidence in oneself. It's not boastful. It's not braggadocious. It's simplistic. It's low key. It's nuanced. It doesn't have to be known. It doesn't have to make a name for itself. Confidence is security within oneself. So if someone is working hard at something and putting in a necessary effort to do something, they don't feel the need to tell people. They don't feel the need to post it on social media because they know within themselves that they're doing the right thing, that they're working hard. So they don't feel the need to prove themselves to anybody. That's a sign of true confidence. The work ethic is there. I don't need to show someone. I know what I'm doing. My confidence is coming from my work ethic. I don't have to prove anything to you. Confidence, work ethic, a symbiotic relationship. And that's how these things work. So you want more confidence? Increase your work ethic. Once you increase your work ethic, you get more confidence. And that's the easiest way to explain it. And I want to tell a story. So I talked about how I've always had extreme work ethic growing up throughout my life. But there was I talked about when I learned what true work ethic was. But even before that moment at Hoop Group, there was a moment in high school where my work ethic took a leap and my confidence followed right after. So after my freshman year of high school, I played JV. And there would be some games where I wouldn't feel as confident. I felt I was lacking in my game. And one thing I wanted to add that offseason was the floater. I wanted to add a floater to my game. And, initially I would just do floaters like, haphazardly, after we run pickup or get a few reps in here and there. But I realized that I needed to change my mindset. I needed to actually work at this. I needed to actually put the necessary work in, and I needed to take this seriously. So what I did was that off season, went to Hoop Group, put the necessary work in. I spent hours on that floater. And what will start to happen is your disbelief in yourself will slowly start to fade away. And you'll only start to focus on what you have been doing, the work you have been doing. And once you only focus on that and you're only thinking about the work you are doing, you trust yourself. And that's where the confidence comes in as well. And so I knew what my floater game was. I spent all off season working on it. And so I, that with the 5:30 a.m., waking up 5:30 every morning to get runs in with the sailors on the base, that increased my confidence. And by the time I got to my sophomore year of high school, there wasn't anything anyone could tell me on the court. I thought I was the best player. Even if I wasn't the best player my sophomore year, I felt like I was the best player. And there was nothing anyone could tell me otherwise. Because I knew the work I was putting in was far more than anyone else. And what I was doing was different. And I knew that I was the best player in my mind. Even if I might not have been, I knew in my mind, I told myself I knew I was the best player. And that's all I needed. That was all the confidence I needed to propel myself to the next level. And that's what confidence does. It can give you a delusion of grandeur. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes delusion of grandeur is a good thing when it comes to confidence. Because that will take you places that you never would have thought you could go. And so my work ethic directly correlated, and it still directly correlates to my confidence. And vice versa. If I'm working hard at anything in life, I'm going to be confident in it. And just like with you guys, anyone listening to this, if you work hard at it, you put the effort in, you put the necessary time in, I promise you your confidence is going to follow suit. But that first step needs to be done first. You have to put in the work first before it'll come to you, before that confidence comes. And so you can't look for external sources to validate something that's internal, something that's within you. It's because that's not how things work. That's not how it's going to work. You have to put the necessary work in to gain that confidence. And that's just the way it is. I wish there is no other way. And that's just what it is. And even with school, I can use an example of school as well. And when I was getting my master's degree, I was struggling with using this Adobe Premiere software in terms of editing for videos. And I wouldn't have any confidence when I would submit my videos or my news stories to the local news outlet because I wasn't confident in it because I felt like they weren't good. But I got with who I felt was one of the best video editors in my department or in my program. And I said, hey, can I work with you for just 3 weeks after class? Can we stay after class for 30 minutes for 3 weeks just so we can work on the software? And that's what we did. This person allowed me to work with them for 30 minutes to an hour after class every day for 3 weeks. And my confidence slowly started to build off of that, even if it was subconsciously. But my work ethic had increased, so subconsciously, my confidence was increasing in it too. And I never, after those 3 weeks, clearly my video editing skills increased. But my confidence, I started to feel confident when I would turn in news stories. Because now I knew the work I was putting in was allowing me to improve my skill. And that's where my confidence comes from. The confidence doesn't come from the results. It comes from the work ethic. And that's something that people don't realize. People think that the confidence comes from the skill, which is from the results, which is an external source. That's not the case. Confidence comes from internal, your work ethic. How much work are you putting in? And that's what that made me realize. So as we wrap up today's show, Russell Westbrook, supremely athletic and supremely confident in what he can do and his athleticism. But what is he probably lacking confidence in? His ability to shoot, his skill set. Why is that? Probably not put in the necessary work. Still a great player, though. One of the all-time greats of this generation. Coaching tiers. What do all these great coaches have? Confidence. Confidence in themselves, confidence in their players. Why is that? Because they're teaching work ethic. They're forcing themselves and their players to work hard. And those that work hard separate themselves into tiers. Rajon Rondo. Hall of Famer. I believe so. Work ethic, bar none. You know how much film that guy watches? Rondo watches as much film, probably as much as Tom Brady does when it comes to football. Work ethic. Confidence. You don't think Rajon Rondo isn't confident in what he does? Every single day. That confidence allows him to get into his players, to get into his teammates, to keep them accountable. I guarantee you, Rondo is confident because of his work ethic. Confidence is directly correlated to the amount of work that you're putting in. And there's no other way around it. That's how it is. So guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful and blessed to have this position to talk about games, the games of basketball, and really talk about introspective topics like life, man. So I'm so grateful to be here with you guys. I'm so thankful for you guys listening to this episode. Thank you for listening to this GMC Basketball Podcast, obviously brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And guys, if you want to, please subscribe to our show on on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And go ahead and write us a review so we can all better ourselves each and every single day. But guys, once again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I'll be back again to speak with you guys in a couple of days. Until next time, guys, peace.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.